We're glad to have you here tonight, and pray for those who couldn't. I know there's a lot of COVID stuff and also sickness stuff flying around, so we're just going to pray that God keeps us. And a lot of folks watching on Facebook tonight in much warmer weather, and we're just happy that they're with us tonight too. So let's pray. Father, we love you. Thanks for your goodness, and we ask for grace and mercy to be upon us, Lord, that you would hide us under the shadow of the Almighty, or your wing. Protect us, keep us safe, keep us healthy too, Lord. I know a lot of folks are wrestling with just winter stuff, and the problem is we don't know what it is. Is it a cold? Is it sinuses? Is it COVID? We're sort of in that place where we're driven by fear, and we just need discernment, Lord. And so we just pray for your help. And Father, a lot of folks are heading down to Florida after the first of the year. We ask for journey mercies as they travel, and pray that they'll be brought back this spring, ready to be received once again with Calvary here at present. And Father, we just, in particular, I pray for my brother Del Ballman tonight. We got word up in Alpena, Michigan. One of my church members is heading on his journey to be home with the Lord, and so I just pray for Del, Father, that you take him quickly, that he wouldn't suffer long, and that you'll welcome him into your presence, Lord. Bless us tonight, Lord, as we continue to study, as we think of Revelation 20, and all of that's packed into this chapter, a lot of stuff in it, Lord. And so give me wisdom to be able to try to explain it the best of my abilities. Be with those who couldn't be with us tonight. Be with those who are on Facebook Live who are joining us. We ask, God, that they'll connect well with us tonight, too. We pray this in Jesus' name, and all God's people said, please. Amen. Thank you, church. Appreciate it. Well, we are in Revelation 20. We just started to talk about the Millennial Period. So Revelation 20 opens up with an angel coming down from heaven. He's got a chain. One of the things that we learned from that is the devil is not as bad as everybody wants to make him out to be, because another angel comes down and binds the person and casts him into a prison, the pit. It's called Gehenna. Gehenna is the place of burning. It's Tartarus. It's the place where the angels go. So it's another word, tartar sauce. Great way to remember that. All right. And then Satan gets bound, and he's bound for 1,000 years. Now we're taking a premillennial look at that. We are believing in a literal 1,000 years. There are others who will disagree. There are those who believe that premillennial means that Christ will come after the tribulation, before the millennial, and he will set up the millennial kingdom. The king will be here and set up his kingdom. That's what that means. Postmillennialists believe that the church will rise, and they will create such a utopic world that everybody will love each other and get along with each other and care for each other the way that we've been intended to. And when that happens, we will hand the kingdom over to Christ. Does anybody see a problem with that? Because it's not happened. All right, so it's just not doing well at all. And in fact, that position was a main position after World War I was over. The war to end all wars. Unfortunately, 30 years later, we had another war that was going to end all wars. And then after that, the Korean conflict, and after that, Vietnam. And after that, we've had war after war after war. This has not been a peaceful place. So the modernists have to explain themselves on how they plan on getting this utopic society when it just, per evidence, does not seem to be happening. There's another position called amillennial. The A before the millennial, alpha privative, negates it, means there is no millennium. There is no 1,000 years. The millennial period is the kingdom period, and that happened immediately after Jesus was ascended. So this extended period of time, known as the millennium, doesn't have anything to do with 1,000 years. It's just a very large number. We're in it. The kingdom of God is within us, and at some point Jesus is just going to come, destroy the wicked, take the righteous, and we'll spend eternity with him, the Father and the Holy Spirit. So those are those three positions, just to be reminded. But we're going to do an excursus, which means a timeout. So we're going to stop and take a trail a little bit, if you would please, on a premillennial biblical description, because Revelation does not talk to us about very much about that stuff. In fact, you really have to go to Isaiah, the 60s, 60 through 66. That's your prime place to find out what's going to happen in the millennial period. There's other parts in Isaiah that will help us as well, but that's the main place where we want to dive in. So we want to just take a look at, well, what is this 1,000 years going to look like? What does it mean when Christ comes back and rules and reigns, and we come back with him, by the way? And so what does it mean for us? What are we going to be doing? All right. So we're going to look at this. Note, Revelation gives us a very, church keyword, a very limited view of what the millennium will look like. First bullet point, it will be 1,000 years. Latin from mille, 1,000, and annum or annus means year. AD, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. That's what the AD stands for, all right? Greek is chilia or kilia. So a kiliist is a person who holds to 1,000 years. Now, I do a lot of reading in Eastern Orthodoxy, and I've yet to figure out, because they are an anti-kiliist part of the Christian church. They don't believe in 1,000 years, but they always associate that for some reason to the Jehovah's Witnesses, which I haven't figured out the connection with that yet, because I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, clearly, and yet I still believe in a literal 1,000 years. So if someone could find that out for me this week and your open time, I would appreciate that. Historically, a literal expectation of 1,000-year messianic reign was held by the Jews and recently converted Jewish believers into Christianity. So this is a very old position, all right? So it is a literal expectation of 1,000-year messianic reign. People will go to 2 Peter and say, no, but the scriptures say 1,000 years is as a day, and a day is 1,000 years. That's why this isn't 1,000 years. The problem is that's in 2 Peter, and this is in Revelation. Two different books, two different things, all right? In Peter, he's talking about salvation. He's talking about his promises not being slack, that God is going to fulfill his promises. It's just not on our time. You remember there's two words in Greek for time, kairos and chronos. Chronos has to do with this, right? Kairos has to do with events. God doesn't work on my timeline. He's event-driven, not watch-driven, which is important for us to know. Second bullet point, it was held unto the time of Origen in 185 to 254, so heading into the 3rd century. And Origen was one of those church fathers down in Alexandria, and that school of thought was an allegorical spiritualization camp. That's how they interpreted the scriptures. So they believed that, yes, there was a literalness, but behind that, it's what you want to get to. You want to get to the allegorical, the spiritual meaning behind this. In some way, Eastern Orthodoxy still functions that way, although they are very, very strict on the fact that there is a literal interpretation of Scripture, and then outside of that, there may be an allegorical or a spiritualized interpretation of the text itself.
So they would believe in a young earth, same as Catholics.
Who would?
The
Eastern Orthodox would believe in a young earth. The Jews believe in a young earth. Yeah, they predate their calendar by that. So it's 5,782. I think that's the year this year. So they would hold to a very young earth in regards to that. So they would look at Genesis 1 and they would see that, yes, God created in 6 days. However, those all have allegorical spiritual meanings. So Genesis 3 really isn't talking about Adam and Eve sinning. It's a story true or false, just about how humanity fell. Something happened. I don't understand that, because if you have a literal interpretation, there has to be a real Adam and a real Eve. And when you get into the scriptures, especially the New Testament, Jesus seems to think that there was a real Adam and a real Eve. So the early church held this all the way up until like the 3rd century, where this interpretation from Africa, North Africa, Alexandria, it's the Alexandrian camp, started to interpret scripture a little bit more on the Gnostic side, that there's this deeper meaning, deeper understanding that we've got to get to. The problem with that is then they hold to the allegorical, spiritualized, and they never go back to the literal and figure that out. So that was the issue. The second one is that Satan is bound for 1,000 years. Why is that important? Anybody have any idea? Can you talk to me about that? What is important about Satan being bound? Scott, do you have some thoughts? There wouldn't be any evil. There still is evil. And I think that's the point. The point is that the ringleader's gone. But there's still what? There are still two things that are operating, by the way. We don't see one of these. It's an assumed. The second one, though, is a definite. Satan is bound, but who isn't bound? His demons aren't bound. They're still running rampant. We don't know if they are or they aren't, but the text doesn't tell us that they are. And evil in itself didn't come originally from Satan. It came from us. It came from our free will. And that still is operable. So that is going to be still in play. So the idea is if you cut off the head of the snake dies. This isn't how that works. You cut off the head of the snake and the snake grows back 5 more heads. All right? And it just perpetuates. And I think that's the point of the millennium. The point of the millennium is to give us 1,000 years of looking at humanity in perfection when it comes to a perfect ruler, perfect laws, perfect environment, and yet what still happens? People still sin, people still reject Christ, people still want to follow the devil. So at the end of the day, when we get to the latter part or middle part of 20 and the great white throne judgment, there is no excuse. You can't blame it on the devil. Remember the old Flip Wilson? The devil made me do it. Well, that ain't how this works. You can't blame the devil because he is bound and out of existence. All right? Those who are destined to rise at the first resurrection do so and reign with Jesus on earth. Now we're going to look at that when we get into the passage about that, because we have to be careful about what the first resurrection is. The first resurrection, all right, is an event, all right? But it's not the rapture. It is the larger event, and it's compared to the second death. That's what we have to look at. So the resurrection, yes, happens when the rapture happens prior to, but what happens to all those people that get saved during the tribulation period? When do they rise? When do the Old Testament saints rise? When do their bodies come up? You know, we're not really ever told that, but this speaks to that. It is the first resurrection, and that means that you are not part of the second death. The first resurrection are all those who believe in Jesus Christ, who are brought up into righteousness, all right? We'll talk about that a little bit later. I don't want to confuse you too much on that. The rest of the dead, the unbelievers, will rise after the 1,000 years have been completed. Okay? So the first resurrection happens prior to, all right, or at the beginning. The rest of the dead, unbelievers, unrighteous, those who have rejected Christ, those will rise after the 1,000 years have been completed. Next, Satan is then released when the 1,000 years are over and goes out to deceive the world one last time. Multitudes of unbelievers will arise during the 1,000 years and will, keyword church, align themselves with the deceiver. Those who survived the tribulation entered the millennium and had children. That's where those folks come from. So they are still dying, although the length of that is going to be long. All right, we'll look at that too as we move through this. Next, Jesus will vanquish them all with divine fire and cast the devil into the lake of fire with the Antichrist and the false prophet, which is the end place for the damned. It's not hell, it's the lake of fire. All right? So we're just kind of going through the timeline of 20 right now as we look at the millennial period itself. Note, Revelation 20 and the millennium focuses on the unbeliever and Satan's demise, but does not tell us about life during the 1,000-year reign of Jesus. So we were just looking at Revelation 20 at that part. It doesn't tell us about what life is like. Premillennial primary text of descriptions for the millennium. Note, the literal interpretation of Scripture supports a premillennial viewpoint and is in accordance with Jewish and Christian expectations at the beginning of the church. Therefore, unless expressly stated, the descriptions are literal descriptions. So if it's a literal millennium, then we need to know what literally is going to be taking place there. Isaiah 2, 1-4 says this, the fourth temple, or renewed third, depends on how you look at that, in Jerusalem will be established as the church, the center of worship for all the nations. Jesus will reign in righteousness, and there will be no more war among the nations. Jerusalem is the center of the world. Jesus reigns from there, all right? The reason I say a fourth or third temple, the first temple was built by who? Solomon. The second temple was built or restored by who? Anybody know? Herod the Great, all right? Hasmoneans. Herod the Great was the second. Second temple was destroyed when? You preterists, all right, AD 70. The third temple was built when? Trick question, it hasn't been. All right, the third temple is yet to be built, but it will be built, and it will be built probably during the first part of the tribulation period, because who needs it to be built? The Antichrist. Because when it's built, the Antichrist goes into the temple and declares what? He is God. All right? So the question that's the mystery in that is, when Jesus comes back, what does he do with that temple? There are those who believe that that temple's gone, and the temple that we looked at, those pictures, is the new fourth temple, because Jesus is not going to show up in a defiled temple. So there'll be a new fourth temple that will be built during the millennial period that will be the center of government, center of worship, and all those types of things. And that's the Ezekiel temple that most people believe is that fourth temple period. So center of Jerusalem, reigning and ruling with Christ. Everything is coming out of Israel in Jerusalem proper. Isaiah 24 and 23. After the devastation of the earth during the tribulation, the Lord will come down and reign in a renewed earth and Jerusalem. Because you've got to remember, what happened to the earth during the tribulation period? It is a cataclysmic event. I mean, the water's all poisoned, the seas are all bloody, there's no fish, the trees are burnt up, the grass. So when Jesus comes back, he's going to restore that stuff, all right? He's going to make this back to a paradise, if you would please, back into Genesis and 3, although the fullness of that's going to come at the end. So the devastation of the earth is going to be renewed. The Jerusalem is going to be restored, because if you read Revelation up until this time, and then Ezekiel 38 and 39, a massive earthquake is going to hit Jerusalem. It's going to destroy about 1/4 of it. So the city's going to be in shambles, and Jesus is going to come and renew that as well. Isaiah 11, 6-9, the whole of creation moves back into what type of a state, church? An Edenic state, where all living things are in harmony with each other because of the personal knowledge of the Lord. Okay? That's what those passages that says that no one's going to have to ask you to teach them about Jesus, because everybody's going to know who he is. I think there's still going to be teachers. I don't think that's what that verse means. I think that the knowledge of the Lord is going to be accessible to everyone. All right. Ezekiel 34, 23-31, flowing out of Israel, widespread peace and justice and prosperity and abundance will cover the earth. Jesus is going to literally send emissaries out from Jerusalem to establish all of those things. It's going to be a great time. Isaiah 65 and 20, lifespans will go back to pre-Noahic times. Bible trivia question, how old was the oldest man, and who was he? Methuselah? 969 years of age. So he could almost live the entire millennium. That's what we're talking about. Does that make sense? So, if you think about it, if you think about the population that has dwindled down to almost nothing, and you think about the exponential development of people who are living to 800-900 years and having multiple children, the population explosion is exponentially going to go. Summation, life will in essence be perfect externally. One problem, people will still be sinners internally, and there will be no external scapegoat to blame. The judgment will be clear and undeniable when they give their allegiance to Satan and not to God. Isaiah 65 and 20, by the way, if you read through that, it says that when a child dies at the age of 100, it's going to be an anomaly. I mean, people are going to live long lives. That was the statement in Isaiah. So they're going to get back to those years where everybody was living very, very long lives because of that perfect environment and because of Christ itself. All right. Question. All right, we're back in our text in, you know what I wanted to do? You know what? I didn't give my quiz question, Deb. True or false? The Bible says during the Millennial Period, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. All God's people said, yes? It's wrong. Nowhere in the Bible does it say the lion shall lay down with the lamb. It's the wolf shall lay down with the lamb. All right? The lion shall eat hay or fodder. So, yeah. So if anybody says the lion shall lay down with the lamb, call them out as a heretic. Tell them they're not saved. Tell them to go back to read their Bible, because that's not what... No, I'm going to have them look it up. So it's in Isaiah someplace. Isaiah 65:25. There we go. Isaiah 65 and 25. Steve got it. Darn those Bible programs. That's Steve can look them right up. Back in our text in 20. What did the angel do next? So the angel bound Satan. He's in there for 1,000 years. That's where we're at. We're back in Revelation 20. Verse 3, the answer. He threw him into the abyss. We saw that. That's what came out of the abyss the last time we saw these things. Do you remember what came out? Well, the dragon came out in 13. That would be true, but something else. Part of the judgments. You remember those really weird-looking beasts that looked like a scorpion and had wings and stung everybody, but they wouldn't kill you? That's what came out of the abyss. And the leader of those was called Abaddon or Apollyon. That was the name of the head, whatever that beast is, all right? So this angel threw Satan into the abyss, into that place, and he locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. And after that, he must be set free for a short time. My question to an amillennialist is, so is Satan actually real? And when did he get bound? Now the answer to that is, he was bound where? I know the answer. He was bound at the cross. That's where he was bound. Okay, that's what an amillennialist would grab a hold of. So he has been bound, but the problem is he's been bound a lot more than 1,000 years, but they don't care because it's just a long period of time. The problem is if Satan's been bound, then how come there's so much demonic activity that are going on? There's no leader, all right? And it doesn't line up with Revelation to where all these things are going to, especially when it says, and the devil gave the Antichrist the power. When the devil gave, he's actively involved in the tribulation period. He's not bound, okay? Reminder that the abyss can be sealed. It's like a what then? Yeah, it's like a prison. You can't get out. Note the basic strategy of Satan is to, and has always been to, deceive. He did that right up front in Revelation. In Genesis chapter 3 with Eve. He immediately tried to deceive her. He deceives individuals, but he also deceives, this is interesting, deceives nations. Absolutely. And he himself is deceived. Yeah, absolutely. He's the greatest one, the greatest person deceived. Note, there is an end to his imprisonment, but his freedom it'll be short-lived. He's not going to go out and reign like he has. He's going to have a short leash on him. Okay? What did John see next in verse 4? Answer, I saw thrones on which were seated those who had been given authority to judge. Okay, that's passive. So this is an inherent authority. This is given authority. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God. They had not worshiped the beast or its image and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. And they came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Everybody got all the fill in the blanks there? Yes. Well, soul can mean the immaterial part, or it can be a euphemism for person. Like 100 souls went down. So it can mean both of those. I also have to throw this out, Steve, because when we think about this, we don't know what identified spirit looks like. So when you have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit pre-incarnate, they were all spirit beings. They all had relationship with each other. So I don't know what that looks like. That's beyond my comprehension or understanding. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the intermediate state. For example, John Martin passed a couple weeks ago. His body I just put in the ground yesterday. So what's he like up there? Does he have another body? He's probably laughing. Is he clothed in righteousness? I mean, is it just spirit up there, but able to recognize each other? I don't understand that. The scripture is not clear on that intermediate state, as they call that. We'll wrestle with that a little bit later on. Okay. Note, there are two groups of people mentioned in this verse. Number one is the people sitting on the thrones. And so my question is, who are on the thrones? Answer? We're not told. Could it be the 12 or 24 elders that we saw at the very beginning in Revelation chapter 4 and 5? It could be, but we're not told who those are, okay? It's silent on the matter. Option number 1, Revelation 4 and 4, the 24 elders seated before the throne of God, representing the old tribes of Israel, and the 12 apostles of the new, the 24 priestly serving groups, or quite frankly, unknown. I like the unknown. I'm always hesitant to divide the 24 up into Old Testament, New Testament, because guess who's still on earth, still writing this? John. So is John seeing himself? I mean, that to me doesn't make sense. Could it be? It could be, but I have a hard time with that interpretation. I would rather just open my hands up and say, we haven't been told. We're just going to leave that as an open thing for God to deal with. All right. Option 2, 1 Corinthians 6, 1 through 3, it's the church. Do you not know that you will reign, that you'll oversee angels? And that's that seated position. So it could be the church because it's out. All right. It has been removed. So it could be. There's some people that hold to that. And the second group of people are those who have been martyred. Now, before I give you the answer, I want you to see if you can guess who these people are. You've been given details, so it should be an easy guess. So who are these martyrs? He was beheaded, but he doesn't fit the characteristics. It's not Stephen. They are those killed by the Antichrist because of their unwavering faithfulness to Jesus and the truth of the Word of God. Remember, it said that they were beheaded because they didn't receive what? The mark on the forehead or the hand. When did that come up? During the tribulation. So this isn't Stephen, this isn't Paul, it's not anybody that's died prior to this. This is a specific group of people during the tribulation who came to know Christ and paid for it with their life. That's this group that's being spoken of here. It's very clear. There are people coming out of the tribulation period. They did not worship the beast or his image or take his mark. None of that happened prior to tribulation. Third, they came to life, resurrected, and will rule with Christ for the 1,000 years. So they're not going to be out of the plan for that 1,000-year period of time. Okay. Note, if you are pre-trib, these are tribulation saints that did not ascend after they were killed but had to wait until the millennium. It's one way that they explain that. I've often thought about that, and that is, when you get killed, does your body automatically just go up into heaven? I mean, do you automatically just ascend your own personal resurrection? The text is not clear on that. It leaves us to try to figure out what's going on. Most of scholars believe, though, that if they die, that they lay at rest until until the 7 years are over. And then everybody is raised, including the Old Testament saints, Daniel chapter 12. If you are mid-trib or pre-wrath, these are saints that were killed during the tribulation but resurrected with the other saints at the rapture resurrection. Okay? So the rapture took the church out, but if you're not pre-trib and you're somewhere in the middle or part of the rapture, then that's going to happen whenever that event happens. That's how that's explained. It's one of my issues with that. Question, what parenthetical and additional information does John give us in verse 5? Answer, the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were, church, ended. All right? These are the unrighteous dead. This resurrection with the tribulation martyrs, this is the first resurrection. Note, if you are a pre-trib, you will have to resort to a two-stage resurrection, one before the tribulation and one during the tribulation, or look at both resurrections as a unit, and there's your key. Because we will be accused of a two-stage resurrection. The church goes out at the rapture and everybody's resurrected, but then those poor tribulation saints, they're going to have to wait until after the end of the tribulation, and then God will resurrect them. So there's a two-stage resurrection, and they'll say, there's two resurrections, Dan, and the way that you get through that theologically is to say, no, there is only one resurrection, because you have to look at this not in chronos, but in kairos. So it's not something happens here, then 7 years later, something happens here. Does that make sense? That's chronos. That is time issue. We're not looking at time issue. We're looking at event issue. So when people who know Christ and have the righteousness of Christ are resurrected from the dead, don't put a time period on it. When they are resurrected from the dead, they are part of what resurrection? The first resurrection. Because there is a second resurrection. And you don't want to be a part of that. All right? That's where you look at the scriptures contextually, and you'll get the right answer with this. Because the first resurrection is being compared, different language, but same idea, to the second death. The second death. The second resurrection is the second death. That's the part of that gets you to there. All right? So it doesn't matter if you died in Paul's day, in Middle Ages. It doesn't matter if you died 2 weeks ago as John did. It doesn't matter if you die during the tribulation period. The event that associates you with the righteousness of God is called the first resurrection. Does that make sense? If not, you're going to be very confused on this stuff. So the resurrection is not chronos. Some people rise from the dead and get their new bodies at the rapture? Yes, they do. Do some people rise and get their new bodies at the end of the tribulation, Old Testament saints, tribulation saints? Answer, yes, they do. Are they all part of the first fruits, the first resurrection of Jesus? Answer, yes, they are. That's the theological way of working your way through this particular text, all right? If you are mid-trib or pre-wrath, it's the same event. There's no issue, all right? So if you're pre-trib, you have to work through the theology of that. We're not doing mental gymnastics. We're looking at the text, all right? Mid-trib, pre-wrath, they just believe it all happens at the same time. So they don't have that issue per se. We have another beatitude or a blessing in verse 6. Question, what is it and what is it compared to? Answer, verse 6, blessed, makarios, and holy are those who share in the first resurrection. Right? The second death has no power over them, but they will be priests of God in Christ and will reign with him for 1,000 years. Do you see the comparison there then? The difficulty is it's not using apples and apples. It's using Bosch pears and what's another brand of pears? Yellow pears and green pears. That's what we're looking. But they're all what? They're all pears. It's just different variety. They're all pears. Okay? The second death, that's what we're talking about as far as the unrighteous go. All right? The second death has no power over these first resurrected people. Doesn't matter when you died. If you are in Christ Jesus, you are part of the first resurrection, and there is no more judgment. There is no more death for you. That's all finished for you. Okay? Note, salvation, this might help you out as well. Salvation is one death and one resurrection. Eternal life. Okay? Condemnation is die twice, resurrect once. Eternal damnation. What do I mean by die twice? Physical and spiritual. And you remember, death is not so much cessation as what? John died 2 weeks ago. He didn't cease to exist. He simply is what from me? Separated. Death is separation. All right? Death is not cessation. Does that make sense? So my dad died 21 years ago. He did not cease to die. He did not cease to exist. My dad still exists. He's just separated from me. He's in a different place right now. Do you remember when Jesus said this? He was talking about, they were trying to trip him up. And he said, suppose a woman was married to a man and he died and she married his brother and then he died and then she married the other brother and he died. And you know the moral of the story, don't you? Don't marry that woman. Okay? All right? At the end, the question was, at the end of the age, question, whose wife is she? And Jesus answered in 2 ways. What did he say? Do you remember? You don't understand the resurrection because we will be like angels. There will be neither marriage nor be given in marriage. And he also said this, you don't understand resurrection in this way. For I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am not the God of the dead. I am the God of the living. They're still alive. They have just been separated from this world. So you have to get out of the annihilationist perspective that when you die, you just cease to exist. That's called cessationism, annihilationism. You cease. If you are an image of God, you have an inherent property about you. You are eternal.
So when your dog dies.
Oh gosh, when your dog dies, do all dogs go to heaven? Oh man, only the ones that don't bark, all right? Yeah, I don't know if they do or not. I think there's animals in heavens, but whether our favorite pets go there, I don't know. That's for God to answer and for me to not, all right? So to die twice means I die physically, I die spiritually. That is not cessation, that is separation. I am resurrected once, and then I head to my judgment before God. That's the great white throne judgment. Both of those are eternal. Did that make sense? We are eternal beings. That's how we've been created. The question is not whether we're eternal. The question is, where will you spend eternity? Are you going to spend eternity with God in a reunion with him, in a relationship with him? Or are you going to spend eternity totally separated from him, not ceasing to exist, but under that horrendous torture of knowing that separation and all that comes with that, all right? The second death is the final judgment, will be explored in verses 11 through 15, and that's the great white throne judgment. Remember that death does not mean, church, once again, as a good teacher, it does not mean cessation. It doesn't mean that you cease. It means you what? You separate. I always say this with believers when I'm at the gravesite. This is not goodbye. This is, I'll see you later. I'll see you later. This is just a separation issue. That's all there is, all right? Death separates us temporarily from the ones we love here on earth. The second death will separate us forever, for eternity, from those if we do not know Christ or if they do not know Christ. That's the hardship about funerals when someone doesn't know Jesus. It's like, and if you heard the old adage, well, I'm going to go to hell, all my friends are there, well, that's not going to work. It's not going to be a party. You're not going to care if your friends are there, all right? You're trying to figure out how to get out, and it's never going to happen. No, this verse connects with verse 4 and ties in both views. There were 24 groupings of Old Testament priests that served in the temple, and they collectively represent the church, who are priests who serve God, Revelation 1 and 6. So take one or the other, put them together. It's not an issue to be divided over. When the 1,000 years are over, what happens? Verses 7 to 9. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be what? He's going to be released from his prison and will go out to, once again, do what he's very good at doing. He's deceiving the nations. He deceives the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog. Now, Gog and Magog are different than Ezekiel 38 and 39. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, they are literal places. We're going to study that when we get done with Revelation. We're going to look at Gog and Magog in 38 and 39 because I think it has to do with present-day events. Gog and Magog here just speak of those nations that come up against God to do battle, all right? So he gets these nations, these individuals, gathers them for battle. In number, they are like, this is always amazing to me, the sand on the seashore. You're in a perfect environment with a perfect ruler, a benevolent dictator. That's a perfect government style, by the way. A benevolent dictator. He's a guy who demands everything but gives you whatever you need and whatever you desire. It's a great system, all right? You're in a perfect environment with a perfect ruler, perfect health, everything, and at the end of the day, you still reject that king. So can you imagine what lie Satan needs to come up with to deceive you to reject Jesus in that environment? It's amazing to think about. I think he's going to pull out the old playbook of Genesis 3 again, to be honest with you. Because the devil has no new tricks. He just wraps them differently. I think he's going to get people to doubt the character of God. That's what he's going to do. Because a benevolent dictator is still a what? Still a dictator. They marched across the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of God's people, Jerusalem, the city he loves, his headquarters. But fire came down from heaven and devoured them. It wasn't even a battle. It was just a barbecue. All right? It's just a very quick and done and over. All right? This is similar to the Battle of Armageddon, 16 and 14, but the difference is that Satan himself is now heading up the fight because his two henchmen, the Antichrist and the false prophet, are already where? They're already in the lake of fire. They've already been judged. Satan's the only one left. So it's Satan against God, which is amazing because Jesus doesn't even have to turn a sweat. He's done. And Satan, the created being that he is over and done with. Now look at how the Millennium Period is described in Isaiah 11, 6-9. Once again, the world will have an Edenic quality where creation will be in harmony with each other, except that man will still have what nature? He still has a sin nature. It's proof that our environment, while contributing to mankind's delinquency, is not the cause. So if you go into some of these minority or some of these socially depressed areas and people are just saying, well, my kids are criminals because they don't have access to the computer. Well, that may be partly true, but it doesn't explain the moral corruptness. Does that make sense? There's only so much you can blame on technology or on your environment. It's not the cause, it's the heart of man. Thousands will come against a perfect king ruling with perfect justice in a perfect environment, and they don't want anything to do with Jesus. That is the purpose of the millennial period. So for those who are anti-Kiliist, for those who are amillennialists, you have to work out how is God accomplishing this at present. And I can't see that. I can't find that in their argument. How is God removing all of the externals to the point where we get to look only at my heart to know how sinful I am? How is God doing that at present? Answer? I don't think he is. I don't think the world could ever do that. It's not there. We're all sinful people, and we're going to continue to do sinful things, all right? The potential battle will once again be for and at God's holy city, which is Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, okay? There is no battle. Judgment comes immediately from God in the form of divine fire and kills them all. Now, these are the nations, by the way, that are coming against. All right? What happened to Satan? Verse 10. And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of burning sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had been thrown. And they are what? They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. I have good friends. They're followers of Christ, but they hold to an annihilationist perspective, which means that if you are not righteous, when you die, you cease. There is no afterlife for you. You just cease being. You turn back into the dust that you came from. There is no hell. There is no punishment. The hell is that you will never be in the presence of God. And my argument is, who cares? If I cease existing, you've wiped out my conscience, my morality, my thought processes. The argument falls flat when you think about that. If there is no hell, if unrighteous people simply cease being, then I have a very difficult time with that on multiple levels. First of all, I don't think that's justice. All right? But this one is also the problem for them. Because if the unrighteous are going to the same place as Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet, they are what? Have they ceased to exist? They have not ceased to exist, because that verse is very clear. They will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now don't read into that so much a literalness, because I don't think there's going to be a time, because eternity is outside of time. I think what that's talking about, it's just one of those parallelism that just say they're going to be tormented what? Endlessly. There's no stop to it. There's a torment that's going on. Note, as was the immediate and final judgment of the beast and the false prophet, so will be the ultimate adversary and deceiver, Satan. He will have the same sentence as they do. Final judgment. Should be no E in there, by the way. Need to correct that. No, this verse is used in support of eternal, never-ending conscious torment in the lake of fire. It goes against what I've already said, annihilationism, and it also goes against the current wind of Christianity called what? Universalism. What does universalism teach? Everybody goes to heaven. Yeah. Yeah, if you think, if it's in world religions, all religions lead to the same place. When we're talking about judgment, it doesn't matter if you are righteous or unrighteous. Everybody what? Eventually goes to heaven. Everybody does. Heaven won't be a very nice place, except we'll all be transformed. So, I mean, the argument is against that. But it goes against the very justice of God, too. Right? God doesn't do that. That's like if someone murders my child and the judge says, go ahead and go free. We're going to go, what's that? Where's the justice in that? It's complicated. What did John see in verse 11? Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. White is always connected to purity and holiness. Yep. The term for white, leukos, literally means radiant, as in so bright that it appears white. You remember the transfiguration? Jesus took James, John, all right, and Peter up on top of the mountain, and his clothes became as whiter than any refiner's soap. They couldn't describe it. It's just the Shekinah. It's the glory of God appearing on him. The throne is mentioned 41 times in Revelation. It's the place where God sits. In general, will God the Father and God the Son rule? In particular, in context and in New Testament theology, it's the place where Jesus will judge unbelievers for denying him and his saving work. And John 5 and Acts 10 are verses that you can grab a hold of there. For a combination of both and including the judgment of the beast, you can also see Daniel chapter 7, verses 9 through 14. That's where the beast gets thrown. All right? And that whole judgment scene is in Daniel chapter 7 as well. Verse 11b, the earth and the heavens did what? They fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. This is a difficult passage to understand what it is. Does that mean that God did something with the current heavens and the earth, and that this judgment is is this in heaven, the third heaven? Is this in some other place? Where is this judgment happening? Divine mystery, we don't know. There are two views. First, the complete destruction and replacement no longer exists. So this is not on earth. Okay? The heavens, first and second heavens, gone. Earth is gone. God has either destroyed it. All right? Second, destruction but renewal. It exists, but it's been purged and reformed. Could be that. Not sure. What else did John see? Verses 12 and 13. I'll move through this and then we'll probably stop for the night. Answer. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. And, singular or plural? Plural. And books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. So multiple books. The dead were judged according to what they had. How is that the opposite of salvation? I am not judged based on what? I am not judged based on my works. I am judged based on the work of Christ. I have placed my faith in his finished work. Therefore, I am saved from this judgment. For those who rejected the work of Christ, the only recourse they have is to rely on their own works. So they are going to be judged on their own works. The dead will be judged according to what they had done as recorded in the books. Do you mean that God is recording everything the unrighteous does, thinks? Yes, he is. The sea gave up the dead. Doesn't matter if the shark ate you or not. And death and Hades, the grave, gave up the dead that were in them. It's talking about the ground. And each person was judged according to what they had done. Those are your key words. It's mentioned twice. All right? So this judgment is not for those who are saved, because they're already with Christ. We're going to be judged. We'll look at this a little bit later with the Bema seat and our rewards. We're not judged on whether we're saved or not. We're judged on what we've done because we have been saved. Those who have not been saved are going to be judged, and they will be judged not on the works of Christ. They're going to be judged on their works. Oh, and they will be judged based on one more thing, whether they were in the book of life, which is going to determine this whole thing. So it's not here's how this works out practically. So I'll be in conversation with someone, and I don't know whether they are a believer or not a believer, and we get talking, and I find out, yeah, they believe in God. Yes, they believe in an afterlife. And the next question I ask is, well, how do you know that you're going to go to heaven and not to hell? And the answer is, usually, well, I'm a pretty good person. I haven't killed anybody, and I think I lived a good life. I try to give to people who are in need, and, I think I'm a pretty good person. Well, God's writing that all down. But he also says this in Isaiah, our righteousness is as filthy rags. They're all tainted. They're all disgusting to God. Why? Because we depend on ourselves rather than God. That's what's so disgusting to him. That God has given us a free gift of eternal life, and we are refusing it and grabbing dirty rags instead of this, the righteousness that's white garments. That's what's so disgusting to him. You prefer filth rather than purity. So you're going to be judged on your filth. And you're going to have to stand before God and explain why this is not filth and why it's righteousness. Quite frankly, I don't think that conversation is going to happen. I think people are, when they get in front of a holy, perfect God, they're just going to say, yes, sir, I deserve whatever I get. I don't think there's going to be any argument, because I think every single thing is listed. And by the way, James says this, if you violate one part of the law, which is a works system, if you violate one part of it, you violate all of it. You have to be 100% on everything. That was the argument James is making. You can't. So are you going to be judged on God's grace, or are you going to be judged on God's law? That's the difference. Do you see that? Those are the two choices. Law, works, what do I do? Grace. What has Christ done for me? Because, boy, I sure know I don't deserve it. Grace. Thank you. I'll take grace rather than law. But there's a whole lot of people that are going to choose law over grace. Don't understand it, but they will. Interesting, isn't it? I'll leave you with that happy note tonight. So it's a sobering reminder, though, isn't it, of what's at stake here with people. And I think that's what we need to be reminded of. So Hey, let's have some prayer, folks, and Lord willing, we'll see you Sunday. If not, we'll see you next Wednesday, Lord willing, too. So let me pray for us. Father, we love you. Thanks for your goodness to us and the scriptures that are put before us. We're heading into rough waters here, Lord, with knowing about salvation and about grace and about works. Those two things don't go together. My works come because I'm saved. They flow out of it. That's what James also says. Show me your faith, and I'll show you my faith by my works. It's not that my works earn me the salvation. It's that my salvation spurs me on, and it compels me to be more and more like Christ. That's the reward system that I'm going to have. But there are others who discount grace, and they think that I just need to do this, and I need to do this, and I'll end up being a good person, and I'll be able to get up before God and justify myself, and I think Revelation 20 is trying to help us understand that doesn't work. That's not how the plan unfolds, no matter how much you want to believe it. Sincerely wrong is still wrong, and we need to grapple with that, Lord. So bless us, Lord, as your people tonight as we keep studying. 20 is a hard chapter because it has to do with judgment. Thank God we don't stay there. We get to get into the beauty of 21 and 22 for the believer, and that should excite us. And so grace us with your presence. Maybe go home to some warm houses. Keep our furnaces all running well tonight, Lord. Help us to get through these cold days ahead of us. We thank you for the seasons. They remind us of the promises that you gave to Noah, but we sure hope and pray that the cold part of this gets out. And so help us, we pray. We thank you for it in Jesus' name, and all God's people said with me, please. Amen. Thank you, church. Appreciate it.